So I'm going to show you how to connect nodes and then how to edit their properties. Okay. So we're going to start by doing the simplest possible fully running program, which is a variable and a result. Okay. And let's just take a look at the text that's showing up on these two nodes right now, because they're different and they're both relevant here. So the variable node has this powder blue text, and it has two lines. It has name and default. And the name is currently set to null or empty, and default is set to 0. These are properties of the node. They are specific to this variable. The variable, we can give it a name, such as A, B, C, foo, bar, dog, cat, whatever that variable should be called to be intuitive. And it can have a default value, which is the value that is already typed into the input box when it pops up. By default it's 0, but it could be some more useful number for the function that you're running here. Okay, so those are properties, and I'll show you how to edit them in a bit. Okay, the other piece of text here is on the result node, and that one's this red color, and it says required name in type number. Okay, and what that means is that this result node requires an input, one input. The input is called in, and the type that it's looking for is a number. Now, the node calculator only has one type of connection in it, and it is of type number, so we're not going to deal with different types of connections in this case. So you can safely ignore that part. The point here is to satisfy the requirements of this node, it needs one input. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to connect the variable to that input, and so it's going to take an input, a variable input from us, and then it's going to display it to us as a result. But to do that, we actually need to make the connection to tell it this is where your value is coming from. To make a connection, we create connections, and in this case, there are sort of three different ways of creating them, and we're going to use the simplest one, which is the series connection mode first. So we select the variable, and then we select the result, in to out, and then we click on the series connection or hit the C key. Okay, and it creates that connection. Okay. And on that, it has little arrows, and it shows this is the out and this is the in, and so we can see the data is flowing from the variable to the result. And if we flip it upside down, you notice that everything sticks and moves around correctly, so that now you can see the arrows pointing up. It's still flowing from the variable to the result. Okay, so these are connected. And the little red requirement went away because the requirement is currently satisfied. In fact, since there's no red in the graph at all right now, we could run it. But before we run it, I want to edit these properties on this variable to make the variable make some more sense. So I'm going to select the variable, and then I'm going to use the inspector or the editor, and I can either click it or hit the E key. All right, and I get the inspector, and it divides it up, the input fields based on multiple nodes. If I select them, if I grab the result, I get another divider here for the result. But since there are no properties, there's really nothing under it, so I'll just deselect that. Here we have the variable node that we have selected, number 1 here. And it has two fields. It has the name and the default, just like the text indicated. And so we're going to call this one foo. And we're going to make its default value 1 instead of 0, because somehow that makes more sense for foo. Okay? And then we'll just close out the inspector, and we'll deselect it. And now you'll see the blue text has changed. It now says its name is foo and its default is 1. And we can see that easily here in the graph for navigation purposes. All right, and so now we'll run it. All right, it pops up and says variable input foo value. And right now it's default of 1. And we'll stick with the default and say OK. And then it says result 1. All right, and so there you have it. We have edited the properties of the variable. And created a connection to make sure this variable feeds into that result, and we've run it, and it works fine. And we'll just run it again, and we'll change foo's value to 5, and click OK, and it'll tell us the result is 5. Now, it's worth noting, I just changed that value at runtime to 5, but the default is still 1. Okay, and if I run it again, it's still going to be 1.